Apparently, Rita and James, there was an election last night, an election that the Libs lost. Now, hang on, just let's take this very slowly. Would this be the woke Libs of Victoria? The woke Libs got thrashed again. Those Liberals who believe in quotas and putting in a woman of colour because that's what you have to do. Would that be the ones who lost, Rita, or am I being unfair?
I think you're being a tad unfair, though. I think there needs to be a discussion here because Rashina Campbell is very much a very accomplished candidate, but she wasn't a local and the locals weren't given the opportunity to vote for their candidate. In fact, early on, we had Peter Dutton Down coming out saying we need to have a female candidate. We need to have a female candidate. So we don't have quotas.
Why? Is it exclusively female electorate, is it?
And I think when it looked like the members were likely to pick a former local mayor, the Knox mayor, Emmanuel Ciccicello, and he, in fact, is a male, and he was the only really male in the field, then they came in and said, well, sorry, the members don't get a vote. We're installing a candidate. Now, I think that put a few noses out of joint.
Pause it right there. Every member of the Liberal Party right now, you got it wrong. You chose a woman to win, you lost. Never forget that. It is not about the sex or the identity of the candidate. It's about the quality of the candidate and, more importantly, as Rita says, being a local candidate, Rita.
Well, that seemed to be one of the big issues. There were all sorts of other issues raised. Peter Dutton's personal popularity, the fact that really what do the Liberals stand for? We've just had a state election in Victoria where we had some very smaller Liberals who did not really advance a single policy that differentiated them from Labor. In fact, their spending promises were greater than Labor. They embraced every woke Labor initiative. So really, what are you getting by voting for a Liberal candidate? And that is, I think, something that they need to. This is a crisis within the Liberal Party where they don't know who they are, what they stand for, and what they're offering the electorate. How can you ask people to back you when you seem to be confused yourself with this broad church approach of exactly who are we?
I'll be talking about that later on in the show.
Well, I mean, look, there's probably three takeaways that I would take from this election, from this result. Beyond the fact that Rashina Campbell was a very qualified candidate, but as you say, wasn't a local, and that may have cut against her. Much bigger issues, though, at play here. I think even beyond this whole issue of gender quotas and all of that. Number one, big Chinese community down in Aston, and somehow the Liberals have managed to allow this vote to slip away. I think it is absolutely criminal that the Liberals have allowed migrant populations that are hardworking, commercially driven, and who are instinctively aspirational anti-woke to slip away to Labor. That is number one. Number two, you're hearing all of these commentators out there saying, well, if only they went further left on climate and this and that and stopped and the voice, all of this. Well, then they would win, and that's what they need to do. No, do not listen to all the PR guys on Twitter and everybody else who's telling you what to do. Those are exactly the wrong piece of advice. But the third piece now is that we see the voice floundering in the polls. It's dying, right? Now it is at an altitude where Peter Dutton can take a very clean shot at it, and he should take a clean shot at it this week and say the Liberal Party. But the reason why the Liberal Party should say no is not to fight on Albo's ground, which is, around procedures and can it do this and can't do that and what clauses are not. No. The reason why the Liberal Party should oppose it is because of the first principles that something that is race-based like this deserves to failing it out.
This is where you and I disagree, because you seem to think that Peter Dutton has employed a clever strategy here by requesting further detail on the voice, and then when that detail is not forthcoming, saying, well, look at it, this thing is a schmozzle. No, he should have opposed it May 2022, the night of the election, when Anthony Albanese made it the very first priority of his government. He should have opposed it then and there on principle, because, as you said, this is a race-based measure. We're going to enshrine race politics into our constitution. We're going to undermine the democratic process of one man, one vote. If you can't, as a Liberal, on principle, oppose this, then I don't know what you're doing, and have now waited, 10 months to oppose it? So how can you possibly make that principal objection when that was evident back in May 2022.
That's true. We've said this before, and you're both right. The point is we are where we are now. Of course, they should have opposed it from day one. It's an obnoxious piece of legislation if this referendum gets up. We've got racism built into Australia forever within the Constitution. And as Jacinta Price has correctly pointed out, does this mean Indigenous Australians are always expected to be disadvantaged? Is that the plan? That Aborigines in Australia are always going to be second-class citizens, that we permanently need within the Constitution something to give them a hand up because they're permanently disenfranchised? That is what this is all about. You're right, Rita, that they should have opposed it from day one. James is right, we are where we are. Peter Dutton must come out and oppose this thing now. On every single measure, whenever the Liberal parties have gone woke, they've lost.